Good morning, RPI. All right, Marty's going to come out in a second, so we need to hype you up. So good morning, RPI. Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Rebecca Dorge. I'm the provost, and remember that the way I describe a provost, some people say chief academic officer, other people say Marty owns the team and I'm the coach. So remember that. So welcome back to Reunion and Homecoming. Congratulations to the newly inducted 50-year club. Amazing. And I just want to thank the weather gods for participating one more day. So what a beautiful fall day in upstate New York for sure. So it's my pleasure to introduce RPI's 19th president, Dr. Marty Schmidt, class of 1982, and he is joined today by his lovely better half, Lynn, which is definitely better half. Marty received his BS degree from RPI in electrical engineering. He graduated in 1981, as I said, and he headed off to MIT for 41 years. And now he's back. Yay. So please join me in welcoming RPI's 19th president and 1981 alum and my boss, Marty Schmidt.
All right, Rebecca, thank you. The introductions are always interesting, but I enjoy them. So welcome, everyone. I want to thank you all for coming back to RPI and for joining me for this 2025 State of the Institute address. As I will argue in a moment, the thing RPI needs most right now is the interest and engagement of its alumni. And for that reason, your presence here is most appreciated. I like to, in giving this address, really try and give you a fairly clear-eyed view of where we're at as an institution and where I think we are going. And on October 1st, I gave my annual fall town meeting address to the campus community. And so I'll be repeating a number of the things that I shared at that town meeting here today. And the theme I decided to use for that talk is the same as the theme for this one. And it comes from Charles Dickens' opening for A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. That's not to say that I'll be describing anything close to the French Revolution. But this is without a doubt a time of upheaval, especially in higher education. And times of upheaval tend to have paradoxical effects, some bad and some good. So let me begin with the not so wonderful things RPI is facing, and then we'll move on to the best of times, including progress that deserves to be celebrated and optimism that deserves to be embraced. In the worst of times category is really all about what is coming from Washington, D.C. Billions in already awarded research funding have been frozen or targeted for termination nationwide, and we now have a government shutdown that may affect even more federal funding for research. In fact, last Thursday, the second day of the shutdown, the Department of Energy canceled a number of research grants in New York State, and sadly, we had a $1.5 million grant canceled for a project that was developing a new type of building siding made out of hemp fibers that offered extraordinarily good insulation properties to lower the cost of heating and cooling a building. The president's proposed 2026 budget would substantially reduce the budgets of federal research funding agencies that support RPI, including the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, National Science Foundation, and National Institute of Health. However, there is reason to hope that Congress will be less inclined to make such significant cuts to research funding agencies. We also will potentially be impacted by the administration's desire to cap the indirect costs of research. These are the facilities and administrative costs incurred in conducting research. The courts have thus far halted this action. However, in August, the president signed an executive order requiring that funding agencies give preference to institutions with lower indirect cost rates, when all else is equal. RPI might find itself at something of a disadvantage since indirect costs tend to be lower at public universities who receive state support for these costs. To put this all in perspective, we have about $80 million per year in federally sponsored research, and so these cuts could be meaningful to our budget. Maybe not exactly in the best of times column, but I can say that RPI has not become a particular target of the administration. This is partly because one area of focus is on those universities that experienced significant campus disruptions following the October 7 events from the Hamas attack. And I have to say that I'm extraordinarily proud of the way our community, and particularly our students, held this institution together through that turbulent time. It's a testament, frankly, to the power of the Rensselaer Union and the agency which our students conduct themselves with. I would have said that RPI has flown under the radar until recently, when the Center for Disease Control and Prevention reached out to our professor, Jürgen Hahn, and invited him to submit a proposal. The project is a statistical analysis investigating whether there are potential links between vaccine administration and autism diagnosis. Professor Hahn has previously used large data sets to explore different factors linked to autism. The current scientific consensus on this is clear. To date, the vast majority of studies have not found an association between vaccines and autism, but science never stops. Even when prior studies have suggested certain conclusions, additional research, especially involving new sources of data, carries the potential to provide new insights. The findings of this CDC research will be subject to the scrutiny of a peer review process and published, and could be an important scientific contribution. Now, no one in our community has been directly affected by the ICE agents, though some of our graduate students are understandably reluctant to leave the country. This year's incoming international students were challenged by a pause in new student visa issuances and enhanced vetting in the months leading up to the academic year. Nonetheless, we welcomed a great cohort of international students this fall, and we stand ready to support them against all challenges. Thank you. And I would be remiss if I did not specifically give a shout out to our staff at RPI who support our international students. They've been absolutely stalwarts and tremendous supporters of the students. The White House recently announced a $100,000 fee for petitions for H-1B visas. These allow highly skilled non-US workers to work in specialty occupations. Based on the latest guidance, the fee only applies to new H-1B visa applications submitted after the government's September 21st, 2025 deadline. We are closely monitoring the situation and have reached out to our 83 community members who are H-1B visa holders. If we had to pay for their H-1B visas, that would cost Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute $8.3 million. I recognize that there are differing views on this issue, but from my perspective, US higher education has been a global talent magnet, bringing the best and brightest from around the world and having them stay. I think of Saurabh Gandhi. He got his undergraduate degree in India, his home country, but he came to the US for his PhD, and in 1963, he joined the RPI faculty and remained on the faculty till 1992. He literally wrote the book on semiconductors. He grew a tremendous strength in semiconductor education and research at RPI and produced graduates that powered the industry for decades. Losing that talent is probably what worries me the most at this moment, because we are making it much less attractive to come to the United States, and indeed, other nations are actively recruiting talent away from us. But I'll get off my soapbox now. Let me talk a little bit about the financials. I'll give you a fast financial overview. We anticipated growth in the past fiscal year in research and in tuition revenue, but instead, in fiscal year 2025, we missed our enrollment goals substantially. I'll say more about that in a moment. There are a lot of factors that contributed to that, not the least of which some of the challenges with the FAFSA system. And we've had to fight for research funding in the current federal climate I just described. Our total revenues fell $50 million short of our goals. That is certainly in the worst of times category. Nonetheless, the board continues to support our Invest to Grow strategy, and we devoted nearly $50 million to it in fiscal year 2025. In the best of times column, our past investments in alumni engagement are paying off with growth in both gift commitments and cash. That and the performance of our investment portfolio have boosted RPI's overall financials. In fact, while some higher ed institutions are being downgraded or given negative outlook by financial rating agencies, Standard & Poor's Global just rated our outlook as stable, which is really encouraging given the times we are living in. Our endowment returned 12.5% in fiscal year 2025, ending with a market value of $1.02 billion. Thank you. Based on early survey data, this is likely to be in the top quartile of all higher ed. These excellent results are thanks to our investment advisors of the past 2 years, Rock Creek, and our board investment committee chair, Jack Tye, of the RPI class of 1972, who has had a long career as a leader in financial services around the world. Rock Creek was founded by former employees of the World Bank and brings a deeply analytical approach to managing their portfolio, our portfolio, as well as an extensive network that allows RPI to source high-quality investment opportunities that were not previously available to us. We're learning a lot from Rock Creek, and they are learning a lot from us too. As you know, we are the first university in the world to host an IBM Quantum System 1 on our campus. And I hope some of you had a chance to take the quantum tour yesterday. In the summer of 2025, Rock Creek enlisted the founding co-presidents of RPI's Quantum Computing Club, Nick Grablewski and Queenie Sun, to help them with portfolio analysis. Finance is one of those intensely multivariable fields that is likely to be transformed by quantum computing. In 6 weeks, Nick and Queenie completed the analysis, devising new financial algorithms, and are now part of the finance library of IBM's quantum software platform. And after graduating in May, Nick was hired by Rock Creek as a quantitative analyst. More evidence of Rock Creek's particularly intelligent approach to investment management. If you attended last year's reunion, you heard Nick and Queenie. And so I have permission today to make an announcement. Nick and Queenie, are you here? And if you are, could you please stand? Okay. What I was thrilled to learn last night is this summer, Nick had the wisdom of proposing to Queenie, and they'll be married. So they are now fully entangled and will remain coherent. Okay, where am I at? I went off script. Anyway, yeah. So I think RPI is better prepared for the uncertainties of this moment than it might be because we spent the past few years shaping our vision for our future as a community, our RPI Forward 10-year plan. You can find it on our website, but let me summarize. The plan has 3 goals for the next 10 years. First, we intend to create a robust and holistic learning community focused on the generation and discovery of new knowledge, processes, and products. Second, we aim to become the premier science and engineering university, driving impact through the confluence of creativity, science, and engineering in the creation, translation, and sharing of thought and knowledge. And third, we intend to lead a renewal of and integration with the capital region that generates economic prosperity and puts RPI at the center of a world-class tech hub. Now, I will admit, those sound like very lofty goals, and they are, but we've backed them up with a 5-year roadmap. The roadmap includes developing a master plan for the campus to enhance our living, learning, and research spaces. As associate provost at MIT in 2008, I had the responsibility for managing a campus renovation plan designed to address the $2 billion of deferred maintenance over 20 years. That plan allowed MIT to take stock of its physical assets and align them with its strategic concerns. I expect the same thing to happen at RPI. The planning process will allow us to identify the most urgent needs, but also to ask, are some of our assets no longer necessary? It's likely to be a 20-year journey because of the significance of the financial resources required, but it's time to get started. The process will be led by our inaugural Chief Administrative Officer, Dr. Mark Hampton. Mark has had a long career in higher ed leadership, but he comes to RPI most immediately from Amazon Web Services, where he shaped the company's strategies for digital transformation in higher ed. I'm so happy that he's bringing significant data analytical skills and a digital-first perspective to RPI. We definitely want our alumni involved in this master planning process, so please stay tuned as we figure out the best way to solicit your visions on our physical campus. In addition to the master plan, our 5-year roadmap includes 3 strategic priorities that will give RPI the financial foundation to succeed. First, we need to strengthen enrollment management and extend our educational reach. Second, we need to facilitate and grow our research impact. And third, we need to enhance our alumni engagement. Let's start with enrollment management, which, as I see it, spans the entire pipeline from recruiting to retention to graduation to lifelong learning. In this era of the demographic cliff, we definitely have to compete for students. It's unbelievable to me, but the Rochester Institute of Technology, for example, put a billboard on 787 just below Troy, trying to lure transfer students. I invite you to advise me on how we should retaliate on such an aggressive gesture. Perhaps crush them on the football field? I don't know. I'm happy to say that after a disappointing year last year in undergraduate enrollment, we surpassed our goal this fall. It was a team effort. Everybody worked incredibly hard. We targeted 1,350 first-time freshmen, but 1,415 chose to come to Rensselaer. Our yield increased. We also enrolled 84 transfer students compared to 55 the previous year, and we had over 100 students who stopped their education at RPI return to complete their degrees. So I'm really proud of the team and everything. It was really a campus-wide effort to make that happen. The successful enrollment season was absolutely the result of collaborative effort. I'm grateful to Vice President Hannah Rodriguez-Farrar, who led the enrollment management this past year on an interim basis, for doing such a great job of rallying the community to engage those high-achieving, entrepreneurial, and inquisitive students most likely to thrive here. As a result, admitted student days had more energy and engagement than they have had since I arrived, and they included enthusiastic alumni in more active roles, and my thanks to everyone who participated. I want to also welcome Wendy Lynn Cook, who just joined our team as Vice Provost for Enrollment Management, and who will lead this effort moving forward. Wendy is a pioneer in technology-enhanced recruiting, and we're excited to have her here. The good news is we have a great product. The education we offer our students, in my view, is best in class. I've been here for 3 years. I've gotten under the hood. I can say with total confidence that I don't know of a better place that does the work that we do in educating our students. As an example, a year ago, a gift from Doug Mercer, class of 1977, allowed us to create the Mercer X Lab, where students can direct their own explorations. Over lunch this summer, Doug gave me a simple but brilliant explanation of his vision for the Mercer X Lab. In a nutshell, he talked about chefs and cooks. Cooks, when given a recipe, can produce a fine meal. Chefs create the recipe. And the Mercer X Lab is designed to cultivate chefs. At the Mercer X Lab, students don't have to wade through years of foundational courses before they can do hands-on engineering. They can simply go in the lab as freshmen and just start building circuits. And they're trained in doing this by their fellow students. And frankly, this creates a much more motivated learner when they get to do the theoretical parts of their education. This goes to the heart of what has made RPI RPI. 200 years ago, our founding professor, Amos Eaton, took students on excursions to workshops, factories, and tanneries so they could see the application of science and engineering before learning the principles behind what was happening. By asking students to run their own experiments and present the results, he was developing chefs, not cooks. And this was actually called out in Stephen Van Rensselaer's letter to Samuel Blatchford, who would go on to be the first president of the Rensselaer School in November of 1824, which defined the type of polytechnic he wanted. In fact, I think we need to tell students how dynamic an RPI education really is in middle school and inspire them to pursue STEM careers. And we have fantastic RPI students to help do this. I want to particularly single out a second-year doctoral student in science, technology, and studies who was an elementary school teacher. She has developed a quantum computing curriculum for 7th to 9th grade girls in the Capital Region. And I'm going to ask her to tell you about it. Please join me in welcoming Sophia Augusto, sorry, I butchered the last name, Sophia, to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sophia Augusto. I am you were close. I am a K-12 history teacher from the Mid-Hudson Valley and now a second-year PhD student in science and technology studies. I am here to share my development of a quantum pilot education program called Girls in Quantum. The Girls in Quantum program aims to increase interest in quantum computing among 7th to 9th grade girls in the Capital Region. Before coming to RPI, I was an elementary teacher, and when I was pursuing my master's in computing and education at Columbia University, I was a graduate research assistant in media and technology for 2 hybrid education projects. So I came to RPI with experience building curriculum, online courses, lesson planning, teaching both in classrooms and online, and working with educational technologies. My expertise is not in quantum computing, but in K-12 education, pedagogy, and getting students excited to learn. While pursuing my master's, I researched for one of my classes the importance of teaching girls STEM, and that research eventually inspired me to start this project. I learned that universities are still trying to figure out how to get more women into the computer science workforce, and there's a focus on program interventions for undergraduates and high school seniors. However, the gender gap in students interested in science actually starts much earlier, with girls losing interest in science between the late middle and early high school years. So I knew if I was going to create an intervention to encourage them to be more interested in STEM in high school and hopefully eventually enter the workforce, I would have to focus my proposed intervention on the middle school to early high school years. I proposed a program for 7th to 9th grade girls that would invite participants to RPI's campus, learn about quantum computing, and run experiments of their own design on our quantum computer. The program would include an online hybrid course, hands-on weekend workshops mentored by female scientists who may be working professionals or graduate students studying quantum, team experiments using IBM's Quantum System 1 computer, and an end-of-year showcase for students to present the results. The program would end with a field trip to IBM in Yorktown Heights to connect students with real-world research environments. In addition to these educational goals, I created surveys to collect data and evaluate shifts in students' attitudes towards STEM fields and quantum computing specifically before, during, and after the program's completion. As of this spring, the hybrid courses curriculum has been developed, and in May, I began creating outreach materials to provide information to schools in Troy and Albany. I designed a comprehensive 3-module course, and each of the 3 weeks ends with a weekend workshop. In Module 1, students will participate in orientation, learn the importance of female representation in STEM, support community project brainstorming, and acquire vocabulary in quantum computing. They'll listen to a podcast by Michelle Simmons, who is known as the Australian Quantum Queen, and present ideas on promoting STEM in their communities through various creative formats. Module 2 showcases young women in computer science and teaches essential coding concepts. Students will engage in a presentation on coding fundamentals, play group review games on coding concepts, and then create a mini game using Scratch or Microsoft MakeCode to share with their peers. In the last module, students provide constructive feedback on their peers' projects, revise their own based on the feedback, and dive deeper into quantum computing concepts. They'll also brainstorm future applications of quantum computers and complete a post-course survey reflecting on what they learned. This structured approach will hopefully empower the students with technical skills and also the confidence in their ability to succeed in STEM fields. So this fall, I am packaging the curriculum to prepare for its future implementation phase. And as I wrap up the finishing touches on the curriculum for the pilot program, I'm currently asking local public school K-12 teachers for feedback on the lessons and activities planned throughout the program. I will then write a paper integrating their recommendations with mine on how we can make this pilot program the best it can be in supporting the role of quantum computing in bringing more young women into the STEM workforce and hopefully eventually the quantum workforce. After this fall, the only steps that will be left for it to be implemented will be participant recruitment, equipping workshops, and perhaps most importantly, analyzing collected survey data to review and see if the Girls in Quantum program's objectives were accomplished by increasing the interest of young women in quantum. So thank you all so much for taking the time to hear about my project this morning. I greatly appreciate the excitement and support I've received from President Schmidt, IBM, the Future of Computing Research Collaboration, and my colleagues in my Science and Technology Studies department. So thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Really impressive stuff. Last year's enrollment challenges, let me go back, or get back on script. Last year's enrollment challenges also revealed that we really need to do a better job of marketing RPI, both to students and to the world at large, and I'm confident that this will have a profound impact on our admissions yield. We have recently completed a perfectly timed brand refresh as we enter our third century. Our new branding is active, including a logo with a bar beneath the letters RPI that can be customized and changed in real time. We will announce very shortly the person we have hired to become RPI's first Chief Marketing Officer. Yes. As I said, we have a great product, so it's a lot of ground for the marketing officer. Our second strategic priority is enhancing research funding in a clearly challenging climate. Before the first quarter of this year, RPI was averaging $16 million per quarter in new federal awards. So those are awards that might span 3 years, but 16 million per quarter. In the first quarter of 2025, new federal awards fell to just $6 million, so a $10 million drop. In the second quarter, we did better with 12 million in new awards. The preliminary numbers for the third quarter is roughly 14.8 million. So we've made an impressive recovery, even at a moment when there are fewer solicitations, thanks to the excellent proposals our faculty are submitting. We've also had a number of important research wins in areas of strength. For example, in the area of materials and manufacturing, our Center for Smart Convergent Material Manufacturing Systems has recently been designated as a Center for Advanced Technology. We will receive $9.5 million in New York State support over 10 years to forward next generation production systems. Another $9 million award from New York State has funded the Fashion Innovation Center, led by RPI, that will focus on the creation of sustainable clothing materials from agricultural products. So yes, we are a fashion icon. Yes. Adding to our strength in both research and education, we welcomed Dr. Stephen Tate as our new Dean of Science. After a nationwide search, Dr. Tate comes to us from Indiana University, a distinguished chemist. He applies advanced surface chemistry and catalysis techniques to global energy challenges. Our third strategic priority, and I would argue the most important one to achieving our goals, is alumni engagement. At this moment, when federal funding for universities is in upheaval, We need our alumni more than ever. RPI cannot move forward without your advice, student mentorship, philanthropic support, and expertise. And RPI cannot take your interest or engagement for granted. If we treat our exchanges with you as merely transactional, we will miss much of what you have to give. Historically, RPI has underinvested in this area for decades. As a result, we didn't foster robust alumni networks that allow alumni to benefit from each other's insights, connections, and wisdom. We didn't spend enough time sharing with you all the exciting things happening at RPI. We didn't do enough to encourage you to interact with our students. This, frankly, was depriving them of the truly powerful resource all of you represent, as well as depriving you of the sheer fun of getting to know this current generation of creative thinkers. So an important aspect of our Invest to Grow plan has been expanding our Institute Advancement and Alumni Engagement team to make sure we reach the people who hold our future in their hands. We are doing everything possible to bring our students and alumni together, including at yesterday's ribbon cutting in the Union and at the Affinity and Club Connection Hub that we had around the Union yesterday. We are also investing financial resources into our alumni chapters, making it easier for our alumni volunteers to offer innovative programming and secure venues and catering for their events. In all, the Office of Alumni Engagement, the Rensselaer Alumni Association, and individual RAA chapters hosted 150 events last year with almost 7,900 alumni in attendance. Yes. We've had other signs that our investments are working. Last year's 200th anniversary reunion and homecoming had an unbelievable attendance of more than 2,500 people. By engaging with you and sharing opportunities to support RPI in places that are personally meaningful to you, we've had a hugely successful Pi Day challenge. On March 14th, we raised $824,000, which was a 60% increase in amount over the prior year and a 28% increase in the number of gifts. Overall, Vice President for Institute Advancement Matt Termolen and his team raised over $71 million in fiscal year 2025. That is up from $43 million the year prior. And this year's goal is $80 to $100 million in commitments. Contributing to our fundraising results is the second phase of a $1.5 billion comprehensive campaign for RPI's third century. We've been rolling it out to target audience in key regions, including West Palm Beach, San Francisco, New York City, Palo Alto, and most recently Boston. And I'm so grateful to the alumni, parents, and friends who have already donated, including those who have created endowed chairs and research grants. I'm pleased to announce that today we are officially launching the campaign nationwide. A comprehensive campaign like this provides an opportunity for all to participate with a gift at any level. It's a call to action for everyone who believes that RPI is just as relevant and important now as it was in 1824. This campaign for our third century has 4 key pillars that align with our strategic goals. First is strengthening and extending education, including scholarship support for wonderful students. Second is scaling research excellence, including with extraordinary infrastructure such as our quantum system. Third is deepening community partnerships in ways that benefit the Capital Region, which is rapidly becoming the leading location for semiconductor research and development in the United States. And fourth, rebuilding our campus for the 21st century. I hope you will join us on this journey. For me, it has been extraordinary. This is the start of my 4th year as president of RPI, which naturally causes me to reflect a bit on what led me here. And I freely admit that when I was invited to apply for the presidency of RPI, it was not in my life plan at all. I was provost at MIT and looking forward to returning to the research and teaching when I stepped down. We also had recently purchased a home on the ocean in Gloucester, Massachusetts. But Lynn said I had to at least give it a look. So we visited the campus early in the fall of 2021 and became reacquainted with RPI. After that, I knew I wanted to apply. Why? Well, first of all, I was driven by gratitude to an institution that had set me on a course and a career that I could never have imagined possible. But it was not just gratitude. I could see that although RPI has its challenges, it's a great institution with real opportunities, and the opportunities well exceeded the challenges in my estimation at that time. Now, a few years in, it is clear to me that I completely underestimated the challenges and the opportunities. And I continue to repeat that on balance, the opportunities far exceed the challenges. This is an extraordinary community of utterly committed faculty, staff, and students committed to each other and to RPI's mission. We educate confident young people ready to do highly original work. We conduct cutting-edge, cross-disciplinary research that helps to establish new fields of investigation and push humanity forward. We invent technologies that benefit the world. We play a critical role in the region, a region that is hungry for RPI's leadership and ready to become an even more powerful center of innovation. This is truly RPI's moment. With your help, with your concern, with your love, RPI could set itself up for an amazing third century. As I see it, the best of times is right ahead of us. I thank you for listening. I hope you will continue to join me on this great adventure, and I thank you. And now I'm happy to answer questions that you have submitted, including if there are any questions for Sophia.
So thank you to all of you who submitted.
Just the easy questions, Matt.
Just easy, okay, yeah. So thank you for everyone who submitted questions. So Marty, first question, the Fed has reported that recent computer science and math graduates have decreasing job opportunities. How is RPI staying competitive in these fields?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, you know, I used to always say, when I was a student here, what was really interesting was the enrollment in chemical engineering. The number of chemical engineering majors back in that time frame almost directly correlated with the price of oil. So when oil prices went up, those companies were hiring chemical engineers. And so I think what's happening here, however, is that you're seeing a lot of discussion about ChatGPT doing coding that computer science graduates would do. And that's a fact. And so what we are seeing is a decline in students who are choosing computer science as a major. However, all I think that means is that it just moves our computer science graduates up the stack. So rather than coding, they should be architecting the software system and then having ChatGPT do their coding. And so I think to that end, Matt, it's really about, are we evolving the curriculum so we're moving them to chefs?
Right, thank you. Next question, RPI students may venture outside campus for their arch experience. How can RPI and alumni better collaborate to support these arch students?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a couple things I could share on that. First of all, you know, when I started, there were a lot of questions being thrown at me by faculty and students about, am I gonna cancel Arch? And my answer at the time was no, it's an experiment that's not completed. It's nearly completed now. And thankfully, through the hard work of the Provost's office and our Provost, Rebecca Dorsch, we've really made vast improvements in it. And I think its time is now. If you look at employer surveys, they're not hiring current graduates of higher ed because they don't like the work ethic of the typical student. They feel that these students just aren't prepared to be in the workforce. Our students are, and they are because, well, they work their tails off when they're here, but in addition, through the Arch, they get an experience in their major, which is a credential which is now highly valued in the industry. And if they're going on to graduate school, their Arch experience can be working in a research laboratory, which is an incredibly valuable credential as they're applying to graduate programs. So I'm really grateful that the Arch was established, and I'm really grateful that Provost Dorsch has done a wonderful job of converting it from what I used to call was a push into something which is a pull, which is students for whom it's appropriate, they're pulling. So to the question you asked, Matt, the one thing that's interesting is we now make it possible for them to do their Arch away in the summer, fall, or spring. The challenge in the fall and spring is often, one is that most employers run their internship programs out of HR. And HR has designed the whole system around having the students come in the summer. And so generally speaking, we're not their friends in the sense that they're not prepared to evolve their internship programs to adapt to fall and spring internships. So we've been working with some employers, but some of the larger employers, understandably, it's a system they have and it's hard to change. So I would say if you're in a company that is looking for really bright people and are willing to entertain them fall, spring, or summer, come back to RPI, engage with us. Philip Bruce runs the office that manages the connection of the students to employers, so I think that would be a wonderful thing. Also, if you have a spare bedroom, one of the things that's a challenge is if you're on Arch in the fall or spring, sometimes, what typically happens with these internships is they use dormitories of colleges that don't have a lot of students on campus in the summer. In the fall and spring, it can be challenging. So some of our students do Airbnbs and move around a lot. So I think thinking of creative ways to house them. It's obviously easier if they're doing their Arch away where their hometown is, but I think those are some of the thoughts, Matt.
Great, thank you very much. Next question, how do mental health resources factor into the enrollment pipeline for student retention?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it is, I think everyone's aware that the growth in requests for mental health support in higher ed has been quite stunning. And so, we've been on a constant treadmill of adding more counselors and trying to be as supportive as possible. Again, some real innovations have occurred here in our in student support systems, again, in the provost's office. And one of the things that we did when I arrived is we moved the student life function, which had been a direct report to the president, we moved it into the provost's office because that needed to be integrated tightly so that you had all the deans and the student life people side by side reporting to the same person. It's allowed us to be much more creative in thinking about holistically how we support students. We've created a student success center in the library. It's a one-stop shop where a student can come in and say, I need this, and we're doing the same thing in the counseling front. And recently we went to an online platform that allows our students to access online counselors, and including psychiatrists. So I think I'm really excited about the things we're doing. It used to be, if you went to Reddit and looked at people's comments about mental health services at RPI, there was often concerns about, well, if I go in and say I'm not doing well, they're gonna tell me I have to go home. And I think the approach that we're taking with all these systems is really to support them as much as we can.
Great, thank you. All right, so we have time for one last question. There are some, just so you know, there are some other great questions in here. We do have many members of our academic leaders here. So in addition to our provost, we have some of the deans. So please know that throughout the day, if you have questions, feel free to ask any of the RPI folks. So final question. As alumni, we have seen a huge increase in energy and excitement the past few years. Where do you see the greatest need for us to focus our help and support?
Anywhere. Anywhere. Probably, if I had to say, when I think about enrollment, what's interesting about enrollment, and this was true at my prior institution, is if we're the #1 choice for a student when they're applying to college, if we're $5,000 or $10,000 more expensive than their second choice, they will go to their second choice. We have lots of data to support that. So I think, in this moment where we're trying to strengthen enrollment, I'd say annual giving in the direction of financial aid can have a profound impact on how well we do in that regard. We want students for whom we're their first choice to be able to come here. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Please join me in thanking again our president, Marty Schmidt.